Hello there everyone, Inky Fingers here from Inky Fingers Architectural Art. Now today I fancy painting a lighthouse. Now, I like lighthouses, they're interesting structures, and maybe it's also because I live on the coast, I live by the sea, that we have some lighthouses here. But there are interesting things to paint, easy to draw. But this lighthouse, it's an American one. I think it's in Maine. We can see that it looks like it's in more of a sunset, but it's an interesting little composition. We've got the lighthouse, some other nice little buildings, not a lot, but there's some buildings there, some nice red roofs which will go nice against the sort of warm yellows of the sunlit areas. And of course we've got some nice rocks. As if you do a lighthouse, we have to have some of the environment around it. Well, I have drawn it, as you can see. It's drawn in 3H pencil. It's very loosely drawn in the rocks. It's just I've just put some sort of lines in, some little blocks like this, just to give an indication of the rocks, even though the rocks will be doing pretty sort of loose with the paint. And also you may just be able to see, I've masked some areas out. Just along the edge of the lighthouse and along the sea edge and the edges of the houses, just so when we do the sky, it's not going to go over the lighthouse itself. Now I'm going to use a dipping pen. They're very good for studio work because we can have a lot of variability with the nib. You can have very light, if you barely touch, very light marks, but if you press down you can get really nice juicy thick lines and get bags of expression. Now, fountain pens are good, but they, in my opinion, are really more suited for doing things out of doors where convenience is the order of the day. Indoors these are very usable. And that's the picture inked in. We'll just let that sort of dry off a bit, the ink. I want to look at the lighthouse itself. Lighthouses, very easy to draw. I'll just use this photograph as a reference. Now when we look at a lighthouse, it's a rectangle. Always, as I always say, look at the component shapes of things, and a lighthouse is nothing more than a rectangle. So if you get a pen and a ruler and we just draw a box around it, we'll see that all we have is a rectangle. Like so. It's just squashed in a bit at the top. So all we would need to do is, we've got the base. This would come out something like that if you follow the angle down. So we have the base. All we need is the top. So all we would do is simply sort of do a bit of a measurement, and I've covered this plenty times in the past, so I won't go in it now, but all we would really do is a measurement to get, for example, let's say this point here and that point there, because we can say this lighthouse is in 3 parts. First part is this part, this rectangle, then we've got that rectangle, actually 4 parts you could say, that rectangle for this bit, and then we've got the roof. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So all we need to do is measure. We have to measure the distance between that point and that point. You take that measurement, put it vertically, 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever. How many times does the height of that go into the height of that? The width of that, sorry, go into the height of that. Make your mark, and that's it. You would do the same for that, so same for that. So you would have literally a mark there, and a mark there, like I've got there. Just nothing drawn in it yet. And then you could do a measurement just to get how far from that area, from there to there, from there to there. Make a mark. Dot there, a dot there, then all you do, you've got this already marked out in the corner, so then you would just, of course, join the two dots, like so. And then you'd have the angle as it's going in. And then this part you would see it's just straight. So again, you've made the measurement. We could see that this part here it's not on the edge of this bit, it's just in a little bit, so you'll make a little mark there, mark there, put that in, that's the same, draw that, and then just draw the basically it's just a triangle. It's a shape, it's not a roof, it's a shape on top of this shape, on top of that shape, on top of that shape. They're only shapes, and only when you've got these shapes in, and then you can put some details, then it becomes a lighthouse. Now the first washes I'm going to put on this are of course for the sky. Now the sky, it's got a little bit of cloud, but I'm not going to put any cloud in mine. I'm just going to do a wash going down, gradiating into this sort of orangey yellow colour for the horizon. And what I'm going to use for that colour is I've mixed them here. This blue for the sky is a colour called Summer Clouds by Jackman's, and for the horizon I've mixed this colour, which is Naples yellow, a little bit of cadmium red, and a touch of Azo yellow medium, and that gives this sort of milky sort of appearance. And the milky appearance is because I've used the Naples yellow, which is an opaque colour. It's got white in it, and that's not far off this colour. I could do this on dry paper just as a nice flat wash, but I'm going to dampen it off first. So I've just got a bottle, and I'm just going to spray. Just to give it a nice coating of water, and then I'm just going to go over with a brush just to make sure it's all covered. And there we go. Right, now I think it should be okay to actually paint on. Now I'm going to start off with the lighter colour and then go into the dark, because if you go with the dark into this colour here, then you may get some unusual colour changes as they mix together. But if you do the light colour first and then the dark, it seems to be okay. So all I'm going to do is do this lovely sort of milky orangey sort of colour. Paint over there. This is masked out, remember. Up to about there, and then I'm going to go into this colour and just sweep it down. This is cockling quite a bit. Be very careful going along the lighthouse. It is masked out, like I said, but only a little part of it. And then just blend this into here. That could be a little bit darker now at the top. And then that's the sky completed. Very simple, very uncomplicated. Now if the sky is dry, and we can see one of the little foliables of this paper is that it is so hard sized that big washes can tend to streak a little bit. But it's all dry, and now we can take off this masking fluid around the buildings and the edge of the lighthouse. Next thing to do is put the water in, the sea. Now, as the sea is basically, it's going to be the sky colour, I do have these colours here, which is just a bit of a mucky mixture, but of the sky colour. So for an underwash, I can just use this and we'll keep the colour continuity going. So we just make this a quick and easy wash like this. Now for the rest of the buildings, it's not much colour in them. It's just some nice sort of red roofs, burnt sienna type red roofs, a brick building or a painted wooden building, and these are just white with a tone on them because it's getting to be a bit more like sunset. So, but for these red roofs, the standard, what I would put is a little bit of yellow ochre, and I shall put a touch of burnt sienna in the mix, and that's just going to give an underwash, because that's all this is, an underwash of this nice warm colour. And then when we put the actual colour of the roof, i.e. the burnt sienna, or it could be like red, this lovely warm underwash is going to show through, and it's going to make it ever so much more pleasing to the eye. So we just paint this in just like that, very simple. Now while this is drying, we can come down to the rocks. Now the rocks do have lots of greenery on, but I'm going to paint the underwash for the rocks first. As we can see, it's quite warm. It goes into a more cooler colour here, but the sunlight's hitting these. So for this colour here, I'm going to mix up some raw sienna, put a touch of yellow ochre in just to warm it up a touch. Then it's got this sort of reddish earth tinge, so I've put a little bit of burnt sienna in to give it that sort of reddish, and just the tiniest bit of cadmium red just to give it a little bit more redness to it. And that colour ends up something like that. Just a nice warm rock sort of colour underwash. And then for the rocks, as we go more into the shadow, I've just mixed up a little bit of French ultramarine blue, a touch of burnt sienna, that's going to mix our classic grey, and I've just put a touch of raw sienna into that just to warm it up ever so slightly, and that colour will give us this colour. So this is just going to be an underwash, so just drop it on, scrape it around, we have a little bit of this warmness just around here. Maybe a touch down here, and then it starts to go into this grey darker tone. But we will drop a little bit, just going down vertically, just to give a little bit of indication. There could be some shading and shadows in these rocks. And then we can work over this a little bit later when it's dry. Now as this is drying, of course we can't go into this because we need it dry, but we can go into the greenery. Now the greenery is, you can see it's quite a colourful greenery. So what I'm using here is two colours. First off, for the green itself, I'm using the Jackman Jade Green. Again, it's a granulating colour, so it might look quite nice. And that's this green here. And I've just put some Jackman's Jade Green into this receptacle, and then also within that I've put some just a light yellow, azo yellow medium actually, which is this colour here. So it's not too light, and that's going to give it that sunshine look. So all we do is we just drop some of this in, and go into the darker green and just drop some of that in there. Wet and wet, let it spread around, do its own thing. And so we get this two-tone effect. Do exactly the same with this other foliage. Just dab it on. Dab, dab, dab. I'm not swooshing like this. I'm not sort of painting as you would normally paint. I'm just dabbing it on. I'm just going to go down to here because I've got a line there, a pen line. So this is could be a separate piece of bushes. So what I can do is back into this, the darker green, and then just drop some in just on the bottom there. So it's going to be dark to light, and then this section can be light there, so it's a light against the dark and going down to dark, and then this section can be more light, a bit lighter, you know, so we get some definition between the foliage. So now I've just put some, it's another green, but it's a much darker green, and a little bit of burnt sienna into that, so that's going to make a much darker, more neutral type of green. And then we just get a very small brush and start and drop that back in the wash, just at the bottom. It's still very wet, it's spreading out quite a bit. And then that's our foliage painted in. Now when that's completely dry, I can put some just a dark green on again here and there, just to give a little bit of more definition, just to places. But that's all the foliage done. Now while this is wet, we can't touch the rocks, but the roofs are dry. So this was just an underwash. So we can now put these famous red Maine roofs in. And the colours I've used is just burnt sienna and a little bit of cadmium red, just to give that very nice tile coloured roof colour. And this is just simply going to be a very simple wash. Now this is all dry, I'm going to go back into these rocks and start to strengthen the washes up. Now for these sunlit rocks, I'm just going to put, this is a little bit of Naples yellow, and I've just put a little bit, just a touch of this roof colour in, just to warm it up ever so slightly. And I'm just again going to now scrape this in. Just to give that little bit of more of a sunshine look. I've got some down here. I'm just dry brushing this in, but this paper is, it's not, you know, it's a medium grain, and even the medium grain is in this Fabriano paper is not very rough. And then I'm just going to now go back into here and start dropping some of this grey. This is grey, the grey I used before. Just start dropping it in. Again, I'm going to drop a few little bits and bobs here and there, just as I previously did, just to make it look like there could be some undulations. Okay, now in this is a little bit of the sky colour I'm dropping into the grey areas, just to give a little bit of colour to it, a cool colour. I may even stick a little bit of violet into there, or in this case it's going to be, I think, ultramarine violet. Now ultramarine violet is a very nice colour, it's a subtle, it's a nice very subtle violet. It's very nice, good for summer shadows. So I'm just going to take some of that and drop a little bit of this violet into some of the rocks. Just like so. So now we've got some nice different bits of colour here and there. It's not a one-toned wash. We've just made it a little bit more interesting. Now it's all dry. We can see we've got some nice little tonal ranges and colour in the rocks. Just needs some shading and such, which we'll put on later. But we've got this big white thing here that needs taking care of. Now it's a white lighthouse, as we can see, but we've got sort of warm, sort of sunset type colours going on. So we have to have a warm sunset colour on the white, because it'll take on the colour of the atmosphere, the ambient light. So all I'm going to do here is mix up a little bit of, I've got some of this colour, which is the colour I put on the rocks here, which will give it a nice warm glow to that side of the lighthouse. And for the part of the lighthouse, the right hand side, that is more in shadow, well, I may try a little bit of the ultramarine violet, which I put on for some of these colours in the rocks. So we've got some rocks with that colour on. We'll marry it up and see what it looks like with that sort of colour on this. May work, may not work, but it's only one way to find out. If it doesn't work, then no worries, we can just darken it up and put a different colour on. So I've mixed a little bit of colour for the colours I've just mentioned, but what I'm going to do first is I'm going to dampen off the lighthouse with some clean water, and so all of this colour can just merge together. We don't need it too wet, it's something like that. And then on the left hand side, we're just going to put this nice warm reflected ambient light, like so. And then on the right hand side, see if this works. I'm just going to blend that in. to there like so. And I think that might just work actually. So we've got now, as I said, we've got this colour here. So we've just continued the colour harmony from there to there. And then this colour will also go on any shadow areas on the buildings, because the buildings are light, the white, just like the lighthouse. So that will mirror this with anything we've got there. So what we'll do is we'll have some sort of light sort of reflected ambient light on these buildings here, and then anything that's going to be in shadow we'll just paint in with the same colour we've used there. Something like that. Now it's all dry again. The only things I've done while you've been away is I just put some dark in the windows. Now I could have put a nice sort of lightish tone, like a reflected ambient light into the windows, but I want to put some window frames in, so I opted to do them dark so the white ink would show through. I've painted in the roof and this part, which was just dark, and now I'm going to just paint in a few little more dark areas in these the bushes, just to make it look like there's a bit more shape and form to them. And what I've done there is I've just simply mixed up some green and I put a little bit of burnt sienna in, so it makes a nice sort of a darker but more of a natural type green. And all I'm going to do with this is simply sort of paint in. I'm just blobbing, I'm dabbing in once again just some of this dark green, just to make it look like it's sort of like this. It's not flat, it's rounded, it's lumpy, it's got 3 dimensions, it's got form. And a bit more important, just around here, so we have that light against dark, dark against light against dark, dark against light, light against dark, just like that. So it separates the different sort of levels of the foliage. And you can also pull this around a little bit with a tiny brush. So here's a tiny little brush. Just drop it in, put your brush into the water, into your cleanish water, and then just drop it on exactly how we use with bricks and stonework and everything else, and then just with the tip of the brush just pull it around, so you hit it's like a hit and miss thing. That's a little bit blobby, that's better. So you get a lot of dilution in parts and thicker, more darker paint in others. And you can see it just makes it look far more sort of textured. And I think that will do for that. So it's just giving it a lot more form, a lot more texture. Now as this is drying, and we're in the general rock area, we've got some nice colours going on, but we do need a little bit of texture. Some line. We need some lines, darker lines going down to emphasise like the sheenness of the rock. So all I'll do here is I've mixed a little bit of the usual colours. I've used some French ultramarine blue and a little bit of burnt sienna. That's going to give us our dark, a nice dark. And then I'm going to put into that just a little bit of the ultramarine violet of this colour here. and small brush, and all I'm going to do is simply paint in some darker lines. Maybe it's just emphasize a little bit of where the shape of the rock, where the shadows are going to be, even though we're going to have more of a generalized shadow over this right at the end. But having some dark like here at this very point in time, it's just shown myself personally, for me, a little bit of the shape of the rock. Now we could also do some of these marks with a little bit of ink at the end of the day, which would be a very good thing to do. But it's just, at this moment, it just helps me understand a little bit better of what these rocks are doing. Little cracks here and there. Same thing around here. And really, I would just continue along, just putting some bits and bobs where I think I want them. I'm not copying the picture, because the picture is far more complicated. This is incredibly simplified. So I'll just do something like this all along, and then I'll be back. Now I've completed some detail work on the rocks, and as you can see, they look much more textured now. So what I did, I did exactly what I said I was going to do, but then I dry brushed some of this roof colour down into the rocks just to add some more tone, and I've also done a little bit of splattering with the dark colour and also this sort of colour we've put here, just going along, just to give a touch more texture, added texture. Now they do look a lot more like rocks now, but now it's all dry and we've got the texture on. The thing I've got to do now is to actually, because it's very flat, we've got a little bit of a hint of a shadow here, but that's just the underwash. We need to put actual shadows on. So a lot of this is going to be now all in shadow. Shadow here, get some stronger shadows there, just to make it all pop. So I've got a shadow color here. This is just the shadow we used, or the colors we used down here, with a little bit more of the ultramarine violet in, and that gives us just this nice dark shadow color. So to start off, I'm going to put a bit of shadow on the lighthouse. So it's dry paper, so I'm going to dampen this off just like so, all the way along, and then into that right hand side I'm just going to paint in and then let the dampness do its job. And then for everything else, it's like, for example, the eaves, anything under the eaves, I'll just put the same colour. And that's some shading now, shadows on the picture. The lighthouse looks a lot more solid now, and just adding the shading or the shadows onto the rocks, then it's give it again more texture. So now we need to fill in the some window frames on the houses. Now I'm just going to use a white sort of gel pen, a Uniball Signo, very good quality, opaque ink, and they're very, very inexpensive. So all we need is to simply draw some window frames in. So now all the details in, shadows are in, everything's in. The only thing I need to do now is just to go over a few little lines, just again, just to make it look like it's got a bit of texture. I'll just do this here and there, and then when it's done I'll be back. I'm just doing a little bit more work with the pen on the rocks. As you can see, it's looking a lot more rocky now, a bit of texture. I'm just putting a few vertical strokes, a few horizontal strokes. I'm not putting any pressure with the pen, otherwise you get this big thick line. Now if you want that big thick line, like so, you can. It gives a bit of extra dark to it, but it's just really, I'm just looking at the shading and the tones of the paint. Like for example, this part here could be going this way and then it goes in a little bit, just the way it looks. So I can put a little bit of pen on there, maybe it's a touch of scribble just to make it look like it's just changed direction a bit. Again, a few verticals, maybe a couple of horizontals, like so. A little vertical line there, little horizontal, 1, 2. And when you look at it from a distance and not close up like this, it can look surprisingly realistic. There's this big blob here, for example, that could be a rock. So I'll just darken up one side, because remember the sunlight's coming from this direction. I'll darken up one side, so we've got a little rock. That's a rock anyway, so we can just darken up the one side there. Maybe just put a bit of dark there to show there's two big rocks there now. Just putting that line there. Now that looks like it's light against the dark a bit. So if I just put a little bit of hatching, as this is a pen work, just on that side. Now it looks like the rock is coming out, going around, then it juts in, and then this rock is jutting out. You can go really overboard in this, but this is one of the things that more looks better than less. A few little verticals here. It's very, very scratchy, this pen, when you do it upwards, but that's very good because it is very, very hit and miss. Just painted, drawn a rock there. That could be a bit of a rock. That's in juts in because we've got a dark line there. So again, just a little bit of scribbling, just like so. So basically, I'm just doodling. This is what we're doing, just doodling with the pen. And I'm holding the pen right up here, so I've got a loose grip. There's just a few little bits just around here in the dark areas, again just to emphasize a few little bushes. and I think that will do for that. You can see now how much texture the rocks have, and just by putting that extra bit of the dark ink on, even these parts make it look like they've got some sunlight on, not as much as this, but there is ambient light hitting them, so it gives a nice range of tones going across. And I also, you probably notice, I put a few very fine horizontal lines on the roofs just to give an indication of some tiles, and I think that is that. And that's the picture completed, or a nice plain sky, and it's a little bit streaky, but that's what this paper's like. It's not the best quality paper out there. It's very hard sized. You need something like oxgal to mix in with the water before you use this type of paper. But a nice graduated sky going down into a sunset. We've got some nice little houses again with this sunset colour on reflected on these were white, so it's a reflected ambient colour. We've got a nice little lighthouse, very simple to draw, not much in them at all, but all the texture is of course down here in all the foliage and all of the rocks, just by putting several washes on, letting it all bleed in, putting some splatter on, and then when it's all done, put some shading in and then go over it with the pen, as I've just shown you, to give lots and lots of texture to make it look like a cliff face, even though it's very much simplified than the actual photograph. Now if you fancy doing this yourself, what I'll see about try to do is to upload the pencil drawing and upload the photograph so you can download it or save it and give it a go if you like. But this was a very enjoyable little picture to paint, and so until next time I'll say goodbye. So goodbye.